Hello and welcome to Jessie James Beads. Today we're working with the absolutely glorious October 2025 Magical Mystery Bead Box. Let's delve in and see what goodies await. The Magical Mystery Bead Box from Jessie James Beads. This is October 2025. Let's take a look. Ooh, Ancient Egypt. I have a feeling I'm going to love the contents of this one. There's the beautiful art card. Now let's see. King Tut, featuring those beautiful lapis tones and gorgeous golds often associated with Egyptian jewellery and decorative items. Let's have another strand, shall we? Nefertiti, one of the most beautiful women ever to have lived, so I'm told. A glorious strand, and I love the attention to detail. You've got coral reds and again that lapis blue. Valley of the King's chain. Now that is sumptuous, beautiful oval and round links there. That's really fancy. That's beautiful. Let's have another look. Lapis blue. Now these are faceted, coated squares, but they are absolutely stunning. You've got that beautiful play of colour, titanium-like. That's lapis blue. Oh my gosh, this is called Pharaoh. I want to get this out straight away. Let's just open up the bag. Now that is a really beautiful central connector. Very, very lovely. A glowing red bead at the centre there. Very, very beautifully put together and nice and solid too. What else have we got? Ooh, some brushed gold now. This is called Blue Lotus. Let's take a closer look at these little beauties. Oh my goodness. So not only are they brushed gold colour, but you've got a myriad of holes down at the bottom that you can use to add in individual lengths of chain. You can use to wire on beads. And then you've got those big holes up at the top. I think these will be perfect in earrings, not least because there's a beautiful matched pair. This one is called Cleopatra. A glorious bead mix with more lotus-inspired designs inside. Oh gosh, I love these. Beautiful cylinder beads. Now, I'm not sure if that's a ceramic or not, but they're very, very gorgeous. Sumptuous golds. Again, really weighty bead caps to work with. And lovely, lovely tones in there. Let's see if I can get them all back in. I doubt I'll be able to get the lid on, though. There's always so many beads in these bead pots. Let's see, Gift of the Nile. The Gift of the Nile was the silt that floods over the land every year when the Nile used to flood, making all of the ground super fertile. Let's have a look in here. Oh, gorgeous collection. There's some gold stone there. We've got blue and gold 2 colour beads. They're fabulous. Lots more gold, and it's got that gorgeous soft touch to it, as well as these beautiful tags, which I can instantly see with that blue lotus connector or dropper. They're going to be stunning made up. Let's see if we can get them all back in. Surprisingly enough, yes. And we've still got more to come. How amazing is that? This one is called Papyrus, an ancient paper. Beautiful little golden seed beads. Now they again will work perfectly with either the Pharaoh large pendant or the Blue Lotus 2 connectors. And last but not least, we have the Sacred Scarab. Actually quite excited to see what's in here. Now we have got 2 eye designs. Now, dependent on the finite details, and I don't know for certain, but it can be called a Wedjat eye, a Ra eye, or a Horus eye. And then we have a stunning tiger's eye bead, inscribed as if it were a precious, beautiful scarab beetle. So that is your Ancient Egypt collection, the Magical Mystery Bead Box from Jessie James Beads for October 2025. Now let's make something exciting together. For this video featuring the Ancient Egypt collection Magical Mystery Bead Box October 2025, I'm going to be using the following items. I'm going to use some pieces from the Gift of the Nile bead box. I'm also going to use the connector from Pharaoh. Absolutely gorgeous, that. We'll also be utilising the chain from Valley of the Kings. For the first part of today's tutorial, we're going to look at the chain. Now, I'm going to cut this into some smaller pieces, but retain the vast majority of the chain to create a necklace with this beautiful central pendant piece. So we'll be adding some links on a little bit later, but I want to show you how to cut this chain into sections. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cut a 5-link chain from the end. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links, and what we need to do is focus on the smaller oval with that round bead that sits over the top. So let's get close and personal in there. We're going to snip that, being careful not to snip the larger of the two loops, and then we're just going to gently open that up to free off the piece of chain. So for this design, I'm going to use 2 5-link lengths and 2 8-link lengths. What I'm also going to do is just to show you how to close this off afterwards. So I'm going to draw off the small round that goes over the smaller of the two ovals, and I'm going to reserve that because I will find a use for that later. We're then going to discard the smaller open loop, and in that way you start again with one of those large oval links. So in order to cut your chain, what I tend to do is use a piece of wire just to make sure that I'm getting equal lengths. So I've already cut 2 8-inch lengths and 2 5-inch lengths. This I will probably keep to one side as an extender dropper for a project. Maybe this one, maybe another one. So I've already got my bits of chain ready to go. So let's create a layout together. I think I want to connect the main chain necklace with one of these beautiful soft gold pads at either end, and then that will link into the longer length of chain later. I do also think I'm going to use one of those in the very central link, one on skip a link and then out to the side, and then exactly the same on the other side. So I have got 3 of those golden pads in use just here. Now, I like the use of both negative space and plain chain in jewellery. So in order to add some drama, we're going to add 2 of the longer pieces of chain drop into the loops that are just either side of that central loop. So let's just draw that up into position. And then another one on either side of those pads. Let's just drop that down into position. The beauty of creating a layout like this when you're designing is you can visualise how the project's going to look before you complete it and commit to using bits of wire to put everything together. So I think what we're going to do now is to add some blue into the design. So I'm going to pop a blue bead beneath each of those beautiful oval undulating golden pads. And then I think I'm going to add a second golden pad into the middle, a second blue bead, and then I'm going to pop some droppers in. So I think a little dropper down at the bottom of the central one, and I'm going to pop one either side as well, whilst I have a look and see if I've got any pads left. Now, if I had 2 pads, I might put a second one in, but actually I think that's going to look really lovely. So the key technique that we're going to be learning today is a type of rosary linking. The only difference in this is that we need to be mindful of what orientation we're putting our loops in. Now I'm going to start down at the bottom of that central piece to create a chain, and then we'll add the chain at the last minute into the form. So let's start right down at the bottom. Now the wire I'm using is a gold colour wire. This is 20 gauge round and it's a medium temper. The tool I'm going to use are my memory wire finishing pliers. Now these have a pin of 2mm and 4mm, but you could equally use any round nose pliers, or you could use multi-step bail makers. 1 inch from one end of that wire, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use the box joint in those pliers to create a right angle bend. You can, of course, use your chain nose pliers or your bent chain nose pliers to create that form. This is shorthand and it can save your hands if you're feeling a little bit achy. So 1 inch from one end, and this was a 4-inch scrap length. I'm going to use the smaller side, the 2mm side, just to whiz that round and create a round form. I'm going to strengthen that, but I'm not pressing across where the wires cross over, just the outside of that circular form, so not where the wires cross. Once that's nice and strong, I'm going to open that up gently, and you can see we've now got a little aperture between those two sections of wire. And I'm going to add that pad down at the bottom. Now these are beautiful pendants in their own right, and if you do end up with little bits of chain left over, you've got plenty of these beautiful blue beads. You can make yourself some drop earrings as well to match, utilising very similar technique to that which we're going to use now. So I'm going to close up that loop section, make sure that that loop sits straight at the bottom of that line. I'm going to grip hold of the circular form, not putting too much pressure on anything and definitely not squishing the crossover point. I'm just going to push that wire all the way around. So let's tighten that little stack of rotated wire into position. And what I might do is just take that around one more half a turn or a turn and see what it looks like. This is the view that we want to have in our little chain. So let's see, I think it looks better from that side. So what we're going to do is straighten that up, very gently press that into position and trim the wire away at the back. What we're going to do is just take notice, let's get rid of that scrap, that visually we've got 2 wraps on this little section down at the bottom. So I'm going to aim to repeat that throughout the design, and that will just give you an extra level of jewellery making. It's almost like etiquette, so it all looks nice and neat and even. Give that a bit of a smooth through, and I'm going to add in my beautiful blue bicone. These are gorgeous beads, gorgeous colours that mix really well together. And what we're going to do now is to create a second loop up at the top here. So I'm going to grip across the wire, bring that forwards, and again I will be utilising the round form to create a loop shape up at this end. Give that a bit of a smooth through, and you've got a nice mobile link. Now for this section, what we're going to do is close this off. So let's grip across that rounded form exactly as we did before and just fill that gap. So let's have a look. There are 2 turns of wire in there. Let's have a look at which is the front. That looks to be the front, so I've got 2 turns of wire. I'm going to trim that end away at the back. And that's our first link in the chain. So it's got a completely sealed link at one end, and it's got a little pad at the other end. We're going to grab in some more of that beautiful gold coloured wire now. Let's just cut off a length that we can use a couple of times. I'm only using 4 inches at a time. Let's get that nice and toasty warm. Nice and smooth, that's lovely. So again, 1 inch from the end, I'm going to turn that wire over and I'm going to rotate the wire around that 2mm side of those pliers. This time I'm going to add it directly into that bead, that beaded segment. So you can see how that's building up into a nice fluid chain. And again, I will grip across that circular form but not compress on the point where it crosses over. Bring that wire all the way around. If you get a little loose wrap like this, what you can do is just tidy that up slightly like so. Take that tail all the way around. You can employ a second pair of chain nose pliers if you don't want to squish your fingers. Let's have a look at which side is front. That side is front. So let's take that wire to the rear, trim that little tail away, and then make sure that you tighten up that small segment just like so. So push that down against the core wire, and then we're going to add in the next bead, which is this beautiful golden pad. Now what we're going to do is basically repeat that all the way through. So each bead gets its own little rosary link. Down at the bottom you start with one of the golden teardrop or pear drop shaped pendants, or tabs if you prefer. Then there's a complete rosary link with one of those blue beads. Then I've gone for a golden pad. So we will seal this and create a closed loop at the top. And then we will continue with another blue bicone and another one of those beautiful golden ovals before completing with a loop at the top. And I'll meet you back here when I get to the top of this small chain. Here we are at the top of that first chain. Let's just lie that into position. That looks really beautiful, I think. And I love the blue with that red in the main focal pendant. Now, when we come to create the loop at the top of the chain, I'm going to pop my pliers across that wire, make sure everything sits really neatly, put the bend in forwards, and then I'm going to use the slightly larger side on my memory wire finishing pliers, purely because it will make it much easier for us to add into that loop on the pendant. So I'm going to rotate that wire all the way around in exactly the same way as we have done all the way through. Give that a quick squish to make it nice and strong. And then I'm going to pull the pendant away from that layout, make sure I'm choosing the central section, and just slide that into position. Now, the reason for making that loop slightly larger now becomes apparent because you can hold across that loop without damaging the pendant layout. Let's draw that wire all the way around and fill that gap with some lovely tight coils of wrapping. Again, if you need to, you can grab another pair of pliers just to finish that wrap up without sacrificing your fingertips. And when you get that filled into position, you can trim that last little bit off, being careful that you don't trim the wrong thing. So let's just squish that tail down so that it sits flat against the core wire and see what that central section looks like. So we've created our own drop chain. Now what we will need to do is find a way to attach these pieces of chain. And what we may do, because we've got some spares, is use one of those blue beads. Let's see if we have 4. We do indeed. So there's enough of those blue beads to use to attach the chain into the design. So that will be in exactly the same way. You'll be using some of that lovely golden 20 gauge wire. So I'm now going to attach these on, and again it's in exactly the same way. You create a rounded form, attach into one end of the chain through the bead, and for the connection at the top you'll use a slightly larger loop. So I'm going to use the 4mm side for that and the 2mm side for connecting to the chain, and indeed to create the remaining chains of my necklace. Same technique used in slightly different ways, and we've completed that Pharaoh necklace. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial from Jessie James Beads, and this is the Ancient Egypt collection, the October 2025 Magical Mystery Bead Box.